Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Turning Strategic Vision into Action. We're very pleased to have you with us for the launch of the State of Strategy Management Practice Report 2025 for the Middle East and North Africa region. This session is dedicated to unveiling the report and to presenting its key insights into how organizations across the region are shaping, implementing, and refining their strategies in today's fast-changing environment. As the saying goes, a great idea is just 1% of success, 99% of it is execution. That's exactly what we'll explore today, how organizations can close the gap between ambitious strategies and day-to-day operations. This initiative has been developed by the KPI Institute, a leading global research institute advancing the field of strategy and performance management, in partnership with Systems, a management consulting company that supports organizations with tailored solutions for sustainable growth and long-term success. We are joined today by Christina Mihailoae, who will share her perspective, insights, and real-world experience in strategy management. Christina is the strategy and performance management expert at Systems. She is the former COO of the KPI Institute Research Division. She has over 13 years of experience in strategy and performance management. Over the last decade, she was engaged in research, training, and advising organizations on leveraging KPIs for business growth and better management systems, advocating for impactful strategy planning and performance management worldwide. Christina advises organizations from North America, Europe, and the GCC on successfully integrating their best practices in local contexts. Now, before we begin, I would like to share that unfortunately, Teodora Gorski won't be joining us today due to health reasons. We understand this may not be what you expected, but sometimes life brings unforeseen circumstances that we simply cannot account for. We appreciate your understanding and will continue with today's session as planned. With that mentioned, Christina, you can take it away.
It is my pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the introduction. And I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share the latest data from State of Strategy Management Practice Report 2025, statistics collected for the MENA region. This research report is dear to my heart because I've had the opportunity to see the program grow in the past years. And today we'll be having the opportunity to unveil some of the data and also connect that with some practical advice. After the webinar, the report will be available on the landing page, and I invite everyone to take the opportunity and read it in details. For our session, we're going to talk about the gap between strategy and operations, between objectives and projects, because this has been a recurrent issue outlined by our recent research. And we're going to see how we can build a roadmap or what tools we can use to transform the vision into something tangible for people in the organization. Lastly, we'll talk briefly about some execution enablers and how to overcome barriers. And your questions will be taken towards the end of our presentation. So let's start with the first topic related to the gap. One of the reasons why we chose this theme for the webinar today is because as we've been going through the findings, it seems like one of the recurrent struggle of organizations relates to connecting strategy to operations in a proper way. So I would like to talk with you more about creating this better link between strategy and operations, between strategy planning and execution. But let's look into the causes of this misconnect. In order to create a better link between what we want to achieve and what we're actually doing between strategy and operations, we have to make sure that to begin with, strategy is clear. So a common reason why we see this gap is because of lack of clarity. And if we're looking at the statistics that we've extracted in this year, 2025, from actually 1 year from 2024 all the way to September, the beginning of September, that was the data collection period, we see that the percentage of respondents who agree that strategy is precise and clear and that they know exactly what needs to be achieved and how is a small portion of professional. Only 12% of our respondents strongly agree with this statement. And while the percentage of respondents there at the bottom of the scale, those who disagreed, have remained unchanged at 4%, we see that there is a notable rise in those who disagree, from 10 to 14 in 2025. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, there's a very small portion of professionals who feel very confident and have a great clarity around what strategy means and how we can set this in place. More than that, connected further to strategy awareness, we can see that it is severely decreasing from the top of the organization towards the bottom of the organization. You see the marking here. If I'm looking at those who claim to have a very strong or very good strategy awareness, I have at the top of the organization the executives, with 24% of these who feel strongly confident in their understanding and awareness of strategy priorities. And then at middle management, that percentage actually gets to be half, and then even lower, another half down for employee level, if I'm thinking widely in the organization. So on one hand, these statistics show us that there is a lot of room for improvement in terms of how clear our strategy is, and then in terms of communication to which category of stakeholders strategy becomes understandable and actionable, because information tends to dilute from the top to the bottom of the company. And we're going to talk about some tools in a few minutes that will help us gain a better clarity about strategy and also operationalize it in a way in which this awareness becomes considerably higher from frontline employees all the way to the top of the organization. A second cause for this gap between operations and strategy is a poor translation of strategy into projects. Because once we've clarified what are the priorities, what are our objectives or goals, what we want to achieve, then we have to make sure that this what is accompanied by a clear how. And how is usually reflected in our strategic initiatives or projects. And poor translation happens sometimes because we have a lack of structure in the strategy plan, and it leads to some sort of confusion in terms of what we want to achieve and how we're going to do it, and maybe some targets that we have included there. In most of cases, this is very easily clarified or simplified when you have a good structure. And the structure that we usually recommend is to have a layered approach on how you define your strategy, define some strategic pillars, directions, general themes that are important for the organization. This can also be longer-term goals or simply area of interests. And then within those goals or pillars, you define specific objectives. Then for each objective, you set KPIs and targets. And then eventually you link that to specific initiatives. Now, this is not new. It happens in most organizations, I would say. But what I'm trying to outline here is the fact that if you bring to life this structure in a visual manner in your strategy plan, in all the other strategy-related documents, or even performance management documents that you're using, it becomes much easier for people to understand the logic flow. And it also gives you a logic flow on how to structure a step-by-step approach into the planning stage. Another issue can also be related to the fact that this lack of structure leads to unclear priority and accountability. When there's a mix of objectives and of KPIs and initiatives, and there is no layered approach to it, it becomes a bit harder than even to distinguish what are we going to do now, what are we going to do later, and what are the priorities for us on the different time frames. So on one hand, we would like to have this layered approach on how we define strategy. So we move step by step, and all of these 4 concepts that you see here are very clearly differentiated. But afterwards, we also need to set clear priorities and accountability. So we have to be able to manage what are short-term objectives and projects, what are medium-term objectives and projects, and what are our long-term goals. And what we see usually is that, okay, on the short term, in organizations, clarity and awareness needs to be much wider. And then maybe you have an idea about what needs to happen up to 2 or 3 years, but then things can get very confusing when you're moving that into the long-term goals. You can also have the opposite scenario in which we have set our vision and we have a clear picture of the future, of the long-term future, but it's unclear exactly how that will translate in a logic flow from our 5 to 10 years journey into what am I going to do tomorrow at the office, right? How am I going to take decisions, operational decisions that are in line with our priorities, unless I manage to do this. If you want, it can be a time frame cascading approach, and it's easier said than done because many organizations are struggling with mapping their strategy on the various horizons, as well as being able to have a balanced approach on how they manage it, because you want to have stability on the short term, but as well, but at the same time, if you're getting too focused on the short-term priorities, you might miss up a lot of development opportunities, and I don't know, you can even become obsolete in the next 5 years. So there's always a balance between looking into the far future, but also looking on the short term into what drives the performance and progress. And the third cause that I've selected for our top today is ineffective monitoring system to enable continuous recalibration, because you can have a good alignment between your strategy and the projects and how the business model, the processes and everything are organized. But alignment is a dynamic concept. So then you need a monitoring system, you need a performance management system that is able to fuel continuous feedback in order to recalibrate the priorities, and sometimes even your projects and your strategic objectives might need to be reconsidered. And this feedback usually comes from ground operations, from the market. This is why it is important to have a sound performance management system. When you're facing this ineffective monitoring system, you have a lack of visibility, or maybe you're blindsided in certain angles because you don't perceive, you don't have a direct understanding or a direct visualization of the operational performance and how you can drive better results, which leads to deepening this gap between what the entity wants to achieve and the on-the-ground reality. And I think we're all familiar with circumstances in which we have felt perhaps that the top management has no idea what they're talking about because they are completely disconnected from the reality of our workflows. An ineffective monitoring system can also be caused by focusing on the wrong KPIs, easy to use KPIs, maybe more activity-based KPIs and less outcome impact measurements. It leads to a limited ability to do data-driven decision-making. So you account more on intuition and gut and the experience of people rather than an objective point of reference in how you take decisions. Oftentimes we talk about the limited automation, and upon reviewing the statistics from our report this year, there's still a low automation level. Very few organizations are using an integrated software solution for managing KPIs from corporate, operational, not to mention the integration of individual performance within the same software solution. And it's also caused by the lack of structured or regular reporting between strategy and operational updates. We need to be able to set the right cadence to collect insights from operational level, to connect them with the strategy review cycle, short and long term as well. And if we're looking at some other statistics related to measurement, we see that the KPI selection skills in organizations, as per the self-assessment of our respondents, the majority of them are rated as basic. 47% of professionals we questioned consider their skills in selecting the KPIs as basic skills. And you see there maybe just 12% or 2% are experienced and an expert, which might actually justify to some extent the fact that in many organizations, the measurement system is not always producing the expected results. Sometimes you can have the technology, you can have the KPIs put in, but there's still question about, are these the right KPIs? Are these really enabling our decision making? Or do we have the data literacy sufficient to question this data and be able to drive better results from it? In terms of performance management frameworks, this is the first time in which OKRs has been listed as the mostly used framework in the MENA organizations. We have seen even from last year, from 2024, that there had been an advance compared to 2023, for example, in terms of utilization of OKRs in organizations. But last year, Balanced Scorecard was still there at the top, not any longer, because it seems like OKRs are now the widest used goal setting and performance management framework. However, in large organizations, if we take a deeper look into the demographics of our respondents, if we're talking about large organizations plus 10,000 employees, you will see that the majority of them are still using the Balanced Scorecard. So this basically tells us that the Balanced Scorecard remains a reliable and common system encountered by larger organizations and those who are usually have an organizational structure that is with several layers of hierarchy. And then the OKRs are coming strongly as a practice for organizations that are more agile. But we've also seen in this big organizations, and not just big, but also regulated. And I'll give you the examples of utilities. You will also see recently in utilities industry that the usage of hybrid framework in which you have KPIs, you have balanced scorecard system, KPIs structured around the balanced scorecard concept, used in conjunction with objectives and key results, have become more and more popular, because actually the KPIs might bring and the balanced scorecard might bring the rigorosity and the structure that is probably needed for an industry that is highly regulated. But in the same time, the objectives and key results can bring the level of flexibility that you might need in order to cascade this balanced scorecard for the different functions in the organization, or even to use it at employee level. I outlined only 3 aspects related to why the gap between strategy and operations. There are far others, but for the sake of time, we talked about lack of clarity. The strategy, if the strategy is not clear, that's a prerequisite in terms of being able to create a bridge between the ivory tower and, if you want, the strategy and the operations. We talked about the aspect of poor measurement system. which is also affecting the ability to continuously, once you've built a bridge, to continuously maintain it. And now I want to show you how you can actually build this bridge and move from vision to a roadmap. When asked what are the most common challenges in strategy planning, number one was creating a regular and methodical strategic planning process. You see there at the top with this 24%. But then we've seen this in the second position, an increase of linking projects to strategic objectives. This item moved from the 8th position last year to the 2nd in 2025. So this is why I wanted to explore this in more detail and see, okay, how can we link these projects to better strategic objectives? How can we build this bridge? And I'm going to show you something. It connects directly with what we mentioned earlier. Strategy is not clear. And if we want to make it clear, we need that layered approach in terms of defining it and then communicating it. And here is an example. This is something you see oftentimes. I'll let you read it, but in many organizations, in many strategic plans, you will find the priorities described as this. And what happens here is that we have all of the information that we need, but it lacks the structure, which makes it much easier for people to remember, understand, and then being able to map exactly what they need to do. So what do we have here? Well, we have an objective. The objective is for this organization to enhance digital transformation maturity. It also tells us how, by implementing a state-of-the-art enterprise resources planning system. Then they want to also roll out some comprehensive staff training. They want to redesign business processes. They need to partner with some global technology providers. Because in the end, what they want to achieve is increased operational efficiency. They want a seamless adoption of the new tools and to become a leader in the sector regarding the digital maturity index. So what you see here is that we have objectives, we have initiatives, we have KPIs. All good, they're all smart, right? We even have the deadline there for this goal, and it wouldn't be hard to pinpoint this to someone in terms of accountability. But if we want to build a stronger link between our strategy and or our objectives and our projects, then we need to start using that step-by-step structure. So I'm going to show you now how it can be rephrased. So let's put first the strategic objective: enhance digital transformation maturity across business units. And then we take that into the KPIs. I'm extracting them. It can be digital maturity index score. It can be percentage adoption rate of new tools or operational efficiency index if I'm building something internally. These were all previously mentioned, so I'll take them as being, let's say, KPIs in the sense of priority for the organization. And then once I have my objective and my KPI, I have some targets for these KPIs. Now I can talk about mapping our initiatives. And I easily extracted them from the previous one, from the text that I had. Here, you can approach it in various ways. You can have independent initiatives that are impacting the same objective, or you can have a program. A program is usually a longer term project with a wider impact, and within that program you can have different smaller projects or initiatives. That's the example that you have here. So I've extracted as state-of-the-art ERP system program can be the main action item that I need to do in order to address this objective and reach the targets that I've set for the measurement of that objective. And then I have several smaller initiatives or projects in it, like I need to find global technology partnerships and build them. I need to do business process redesign, and then I need to do staff training probably for the tools that I'm going to implement. So while all the concepts of SMART, if you want, SMART objectives are still placed here, but it's one way to communicate strategy and have a discussion with the executive team on this format whether breaking it down in the shape that, in the format that you see here. And this is what I mean. Begin with better structure for your strategy as a prerequisite to build that bridge and be able to translate it into projects. Then you have to create a criteria for your initiatives and be able to filter them based on the priority matrix, because we want to make sure that all the projects we actually approve are relevant for the, are impacting our strategy. There are a variety of criteria that you can use. I'll share here the most popular one and the ones that are also critical. If you want to create a link between projects and strategy, of course, the first criteria to have in mind is strategy alignment. You have to standardize the impact that the initiative has on one or more objectives. By standardize, I mean when you're using that priority matrix, you're going to use some sort of scoring, medium, high, low. Give a score, even if you find it a bit subjective, but it's still better than nothing, in order to be able to filter to the many ideas that you have for projects, or when you need to approve and build the strategic portfolio of projects. Resources requirement or feasibility is another important criteria. The risk of not implementing it, there are many good things that we can do, but not all of them might be necessarily highly aligned to our strategy, or making a real difference in the way we operate. Return on investment on financial impact, urgency. Do we need it now? Do we need it on long term? What is the perspective? Usually in the matrix, in the priority matrix, you would allocate some weights to this criteria. I would like to emphasize here that this weighting is just a point of reference, but do weight significantly the component or the criterion of strategy alignment, because otherwise it will not actually lead to a portfolio that is truly supporting the strategy. And then thirdly, map the processes. Consider urgency, risks, interdependencies, because in a portfolio you're going to have interdependency between these projects, and try to map everything in a logical and structural flow. Second, use visual tools that through which I can understand the alignment and the connections, and I'm able to communicate it widely in the company. And thirdly, with a proper tracking of the performance results and project progress, the magic is that you can actually validate if your initial assumptions and the data that you use to decide the impact, the influence of the initiatives on strategic objectives is actually real and validated. So when I did that priority matrix and I said that, okay, these 3 projects are the ones with most impact on the strategy, I've taken that decision based on assumptions, on data, instinct, depending on what I had at hand. But if you have a proper tracking system, then, and it's connected to KPIs, then you'll be able to analyze and assess whether your assumptions were right and whether those projects are really driving the results of the KPIs that you're tracking. Or if not, then still you've learned something and you can recalibrate and adjust in the next stage of planning. And you can even take out some of the projects, let them go, and relocate resources where the impact is bigger. So on this point of how to map, I think we're all familiar with this visual. That's a strategy map. Now, the strategy map usually has objectives. You're going to see here the objectives, what the entity wants to achieve. I've taken out, for the sake of space in the slide, mission, vision, values, but the main focus of the strategy map is to show you the strategic themes and how they connect with each other. And the color coding here shows that objectives belong to particular strategic themes like productivity, sustainability, and growth. This is for a telecommunication company. Now, I see this often. What I don't see very often is a strategy roadmap. And that's what I wanted to share with you today, is how can you build this bridge? Well, if you want to link projects better to strategy, you have to make sure that you have used that matrix and your initiatives are actually connected to the objectives, but then they need to be rolled out in a visual in which everyone can understand what happens when. And you have here an example in which the objectives are connected to the initiatives. And then you can see for every quarter what is the status and what is the time frame for those initiatives. You can even have correlations between them, because sometimes you need to finish one project so you can start the other one. You can even map those interdependencies. And ideally, you would also map the accountability. What you see here, the colors are changed for the initiatives with the legend at the top so that you can know exactly who is the accountable person to drive that initiative. And what this is showing us is basically productivity. If I take you back, productivity was one of the strategic themes. So how am I going to achieve, how am I going to be successful in my productivity goal? Well, I have here a sequence of initiative of action items that I have to deliver. And this roadmap can be built on the short term, medium term, long term. And it becomes a point of reference and against which we track, approve, and adjust to make sure that everything we're doing is still here. And I just had a talk recently with an organization. They are semi-governmental, and I was talking with the chief from IT. He was showing me the roadmap that they had for the organization, and they were handling all technology-related projects in the organization. So every time someone had a proposition, they would say, "Okay, I need to I need a new system for processing invoices. I need a new accounting software solutions." They would have to see if that proposition of project would actually fit on the strategic roadmap, and where would it fit, where would it impact, which objectives will be impacted, what would be the interdependencies with other initiatives. And if there would be a good fit, then okay, the initiative would go into a deeper analysis so that we would prepare it for approval and further activation. The third tool is the strategy board. A strategy board is a visual board where executives and managers of all levels can understand strategy, monitor progress, and guide adjustments. And this board should be present in all functional areas. So whether you would have it digital or you would have it printed, you want to have it all the time, all over, because that's how you raise awareness, and that's how you create alignment, because it's a dynamic concept and you need people constantly being able to interpret the information that we get from the environment through the KPIs, through the metrics, through observation sometimes, and try to put that within the context of our strategy to know exactly what we should be doing. The strategy board can bring strategy into the core of operations, in the middle of the action, among all functional areas. It can connect strategy to measurement using KPIs and strategy with projects. And in this way, when it's also visual and when we have it at hand and we talk about it, it's very easy to spot misalignment, adjust, and it also helps us connect ideas to recalibrate on the way. So how does it look like? A strategy board would have the strategy map, would have the strategy roadmap, would have the scorecard, and we'll have this section with updates, ideas, and put them close to decision. So imagine this as a print or as a digital, as an intranet place where you can see this, and it is part of the weekly conversations at operational level, of the monthly performance reviews, of the quarterly performance reviews, which enables everyone to list down and connect what's happening at the moment with our roadmap, with our strategy, with our performance. This is a tool highly recommended, and I think it can steer very interesting conversations at team level, and it enables us to collect these updates, these ideas, to correlate our decisions, and everything is happening from the bottom to the top. Because at the top, if you want, we engage stakeholders, we define the strategy map, the roadmap, and we've set some KPIs. But then these tools are constantly fueled by data, which comes from the bottom to the top, and they steer the conversation about performance. And when you put all of the elements together, then you have a chance not just to build that bridge from vision to roadmap, but also to constantly adapt it. Because one of the reasons, and that's a strong reason why there's a gap between strategy and operations, because the reality is completely different in the operations compared to the strategy, and people have no idea how to build that bridge, how to understand and how to contribute. But this can happen through regular meetings and tools like the one that I'm showing you now. In terms of execution enablers, we're going to focus only on briefly on 3 aspects, and these are the ones that are reflected by the statistics we've collected in State of Strategy Management 2025. Just like last year, ineffective cross-functional collaboration is still there at the top, and along with the ineffective management of oversight of strategy execution and poor measurement or tracking of progress. So I think that these are just building further on what we talked earlier, but there is one point that I haven't dived into, and that is cross-functional collaboration, because the other two, I think we've touched them in the previous slides. So what we look, if I'm looking at this top 3 reasons for failure in strategy execution, it becomes obvious that more than half of the reasons are related to aspects inside the organization. So it's not about the environment, it's not about the client, it's not about how the market evolves, it's about what we do. So this is great because it means we have control over these aspects, and we can there's a higher chance of improving and addressing the situation. Ineffective collaboration is the most cited barrier, with 48% of professionals as outlining it to be a major challenge in execution. It was 42% in 2024, and now 48%. We see that we have different divisions, departments, functions that begin to operate in silos. Sometimes the usage of KPIs does actually the opposite. It's driving an individualistic approach, and everyone is focused on their KPIs, their priorities, and sometimes they achieve those targets on the expense of a negative impact on other areas of the organization. And usually this fragmentation, if there's also a fragmentation of accountability, it leads to a very slow execution. If we want to address the matter of cross-functional collaboration, of course, there are technical and cultural factors as well. So from a technical point of view, you would need a performance management system that is integrating all of the levels within the organization, from corporate, operational, and individual. And you can build better alignment with, we can build a better alignment with objectives and KPIs once we manage to define how each functional area can contribute to the strategic objectives and KPIs, and then further how each individual can do so. That would be from the technical point of view. This is quite a wide subject, so I'm not going to dive into a lot of details on it. And then there's also the ability to use shared objectives among different units, which would have to work together in order to achieve those KPIs, can also enhance collaboration, and it might work better than having an isolated approach. But we can also foster strategic alignment in relation to people. Transparent leadership, when stakeholders commit to address challenges, and when they understand the strategy and they get involved into developing it, it becomes they become much more engaged. And in all of the scenarios, they will have to do trade-offs, right, between departments. But when the trade-offs become transparent and they are discussed and they are decided as a group, they're much easier accepted. We want to ensure that there is a distributed planning in the sense that we have operational commitments across the entire organization and that middle management is given the acknowledgement they deserve for the importance they play in strategy execution. We need to build a shared sense of purpose for the employees, not just to the top, but across the organization, and strategic and data literacy, so that, again, not just the top management, but all the management layers in the organization have an in-depth understanding of how to work with objectives, KPIs, and initiatives. The second challenge we had outlined is about ineffective management or oversight of strategy execution through projects. And I believe that with the usage of a step-by-step approach to define and prioritize projects in alignment with strategy, as well as using the strategy board and the strategy roadmap, this can be significantly straightened because it has been increasing from 33% to 44% in just 1 year, meaning that more and more organizations see this to be a pressuring matter in their operations, in the way they manage strategy. And another significant increase from 31% to 44% was about poor management, measurement and tracking of progress. And I think this most likely deserves a webinar on its own, just to talk about how can we straighten the measurement progress. But the impact is that when poor measurement becomes an issue, it starts because strategy might be unclear or KPIs might be unclear, because tracking is inconsistent or fragmented, and leaders have end up having late reactions or not trusting the data because it is unreliable. So if we have these barriers, I think it's important to focus on the enablers and what we can do in order to overcome them. Instead of vague KPIs, let's focus on outcome and impact KPIs. Instead of inconsistent tracking, we have to have discipline reviews, monthly project tracking, if not daily, within teams. Weekly, if not daily, project tracking, monthly performance reporting for KPIs, strategic reviews every 3 months, and then the annual strategy review process. If you're facing with fragmented data, we need to go into one source of the truth, a single source of the truth, and usually technology is a key enabler here. And lastly, we have to move from lagging KPIs to predictive analytics and being able to use more leading KPIs, early warning indications, so that we can proactively manage performance. Now, in closing of our webinar, to do a wrap-up, I'm going to share with you the 4 shifts of a living strategy. This belonged to my colleague Teodora. I truly liked how she phrased these 4 stages, because strategy is indeed a living organism. And it starts with igniting the sparkle, or strategy envisioning, having clarity of the future and being able to simulate it, to design it, to test various futures, to explore possibilities, and to try to also be prepared for the various futures. And in this stage is also important to rely on stakeholders co-creation, engaging beyond the top management into defining the vision and the expectations. And more recently, we have AI tools that are helping us with foresight and with testing these scenarios. So once you have lightened the sparkle and you know what lies in the future and what you envision the organization to become, you can move into alignment, into defining it, and creating a constant flow. And for this, you need to have a strategy map, right? The objectives map. You need to have the strategy roadmap with the initiatives, or a dynamic portfolio of initiatives that you can handle, and to be able to do prioritization, ideally based on clearly established criteria. Now the engine will become the operations, who must constantly be synchronized to what is happening or how the strategy is evolving. You can have digital twins for strategy, in which you simulate choices before committing resources, which is actually great. You can try micro experimentation so that you have a wider understanding of what operating model and what operational workflows would support better strategy execution. And lastly, awareness, or the eco, is necessary for everyone to be able to constantly contribute to strategy. And in here you have tools like strategy storytelling, strategy arcade, in which there are some games. Everything is gamified, and people can explore and learn about their strategy in a fun way. You can have sessions, echo chambers, as they'll call them, that engage employees to challenge strategy, to ask questions, to try to have a dialogue, and not just the top-down communication of priorities and expectations. So I hope that this four stages, Sparker, Flow, Engine, and Eco, will steer your imagination, and you like to explore that in more detail, to bring something new and a different perspective on how we move from planning into execution, and how we can translate our strategy into concrete projects and move from a document that many organizations have that unlists their priorities, to the real case scenario in which it gets to be put in practice on a daily basis by all employees at all levels. Thank you very much. And I think we can take a few questions. Andrei?
Right. Thank you very much for your presentation, Christina. We do indeed have a couple of questions that we got. I even got a couple privately. They weren't put in the all chat. So the first one would be, why do most strategies look good on paper, but when it comes to application, they're not very successful?
Most likely because we haven't considered all the details. I was thinking now, I think this is a very good, it could have been a very good starting point for the first topic in our webinar, like why the gap between strategy and operations. Well, because in the moment, if at the moment at which you are designing the strategy and you are identifying the right projects and initiatives, if those ones are not then supported by the proper operational model, by the proper structure of workflows, by the business model in itself, operating model, that it's not aligned, then of course that the idea looked good on paper, but it completely ignored all of the implications related to execution, right? So if you want to make sure that you are definitely focusing on something that is realistically possible, you would like to be connected with the internal capabilities and all of the requirements for that initiative to be turned into reality. It doesn't mean that you cannot have a bold initiatives, or you cannot work in innovation. You can break the barriers, but you still need to be aware about what is required in order for that initiative to be successful. So I think that even an initiative description form or project charter could help address this matter upfront, so that once you've identified the initiative, it would go to, let's say, 5-10 questions that will check its feasibility to be executed in practice. And then all of that information can be used to actually create a system or the approach that is needed for those initiatives to succeed.
All right. Now, the second one was, what is the impact of AI on strategy implementation, and how can one synchronize performance with AI?
I'm thinking now, because I remember from last year, we had in the 2024 report, AI adoption in tools for strategy planning was 39%, if I'm not mistaken, in 2024. And in this year report is only 15%. It's quite a drop. And now professionals seemed to, less professionals admit to using AI as part of strategy planning than compared to last year. So I think this raises some critical questions and concerns. And we also know that Microsoft, which is a strong brand, a lot of resources and huge budgets at hand, is having difficulties with bringing their AI tools into enterprises and ensuring a wide adoption. Why? Because, okay, many of these AI tools are helping on productivity, but in the same time, most of them or all of them have faults, like they hallucinate, there are some errors there's some ethical concerns. So what I'm trying to say is that the advance of AI is strong, but it does face certain technical issues and applicability issues that larger organizations have noticed, and they're more reluctant in terms of adopting these. I'm not saying that AI is not good. I'm saying that we should be cautious, and definitely the right usage of the AI would be AI as the assistant, AI as the facilitator, rather than the replacement of a particular activity entirely. Probably in a few years, many of these, I don't know, technical issues that we're facing now will be most likely fixed, but I don't think that a human value will be taken out of it. Now, going a little bit closer to the question, we've seen AI tools being used in strategy planning for conducting research, for envisioning the different possible scenarios, for data modeling, data analysis, which is great. I think that at this level, as long as it relates to getting us insights into big data, it's a valuable tool and can be used, but like I mentioned, not as a replacement or as the sole decision making, but rather as an assistant, and always combine that with the experience and the human touch, I would say.
Right. Now we have one in the general chat that was sent. So, in public sector organizations where bureaucracy levels are usually very high, what practical steps, like a few steps, that can help ensure strategic initiatives don't stall at the approval stage where they most often do?
Um, well, I think the public sector is it is well known for being slower than than the private sector in various areas of the operations, whether we're talking about client facing or back end, and they're most likely related to each other. How can we ensure that we have a more agile approval process for our initiatives? Is by making sure that we're not overcomplicating things, because in some cases that can also be the case. For example, in order for an initiative to be approved, we would have to have like a one pager explaining the initiative. And I think I mentioned it earlier. It can be 5 questions that your initiative has to answer. And if the answers are convincing, then we can move forward with that. And some examples are what could I put in that, let's say, one pager about the initiative? Question number 1, the criteria that I shared with you. How is this initiative impacting one or more of our strategic initiative? Question number 2, what happens if we don't do it? Question number 3, what do we envision to happen if we do it? Question number 4, what are the financial implications? And you can further brainstorm on what would be the critical things that we need for decision making. And then what pager has to end up very clearly to the approval point, which can agree or not. If you want to streamline a process, I think you need to map it very clearly and see exactly where the bottlenecks are, and try to identify if the bottleneck is actually a system process, or is it a people process? Is it a cultural process? Because sometimes when it's the system, it's much easier to fix because you can reroute the process. But when it's the culture, when you have a people's problem, then that might take longer because it requires a changing of habits, raising awareness, perhaps upskilling people. So I would advise to map the process to see what type of challenges you're facing with, and make it simple. One pager, 5 questions about that strategic initiative, and hand it over to the decision-making person. Even consider setting up committees. So we don't rely on one person's availability. You can have a committee dedicated to review and approve these things. The committee meets regularly. They go through the initiatives, they vote, and yeah, it should be much faster and easy to be done.
Right. And now, one final question, and then we can wrap up. How do you keep executives engaged beyond the kickoff? And what cadence actually sustains attention?
I'm going to assume that you are referring now to keeping stakeholders engaged beyond the kickoff of strategy or the
Yeah,
project
yeah,
strategy.
yeah, beyond the
Um,
kickoff of strategy.
the best way to keep them engaged is to shift the perspective from strategy office being responsible for strategy, and then the executives are responsible for the functional units or the divisions that they're handling. I do see sometimes that there's this sort of discrepancy. The strategy office has to do the research. They propose the strategic objectives, they propose the KPIs, they propose the targets, and then they get in the executive to double check, discuss, and then we wrap it up. So if we want them to be engaged, I think strategy is everyone's job. The strategy office is just the custodian, is the facilitator, but defining the priorities, defining the KPIs, setting the targets, identifying interdependencies, this entire process has to be owned and felt like it's owned by the executive team. This is something that we do as a team, and we have an enabler who is bringing us the tools, the methods, is keeping us accountable, like the strategy office, for us to get this done. Because the moment in which it is ours to build, to share, and to use, the engagement level it becomes higher. The engagement level becomes higher because they're not only, we don't talk about it just one time per year and every quarter where you have to report what you did. It has to become part of everyday activity. And it becomes part of everyday activity when we have the strategy and performance management office setting some guidelines and interfering also in how performance is managed operationally. When that component, which is usually the focus of the executives, becomes standardized, linked, and aligned with the quarterly, let's say, reporting that we do, then it is no longer reporting for the KPIs, for corporate KPIs. Doesn't become just a task I have to do because anyhow another department is handling, but it becomes directly linked with what I usually do and in order to manage my department. A recommended cadence is for executives to attend the annual planning, to attend the quarterly meetings, and I think another great practice is for monthly meetings. It might not be feasible for organizational sizes, for all formats, to have a monthly performance review meeting with everyone, all of the executive teams, to discuss on strategy. Maybe there isn't much to discuss anyway, but on a monthly cadence, we could have the CEO, the chief operating officer, the strategy office meeting individually with each executive in order to discuss the specific challenges related to that function, to how they're progressing, or maybe they have interdependencies. If they're strong in their dependencies, you can even do that in a group with 2 or 3 functional areas. So for sure, we need something on a monthly basis to keep them engaged, and they should further be engaged to transform and bring strategy into concrete objectives and action items for middle management, which again are a critical layer for strategy execution. So the way we engage, the way the CEO engages with the executives, it influences a lot the way the executives are going to engage with middle management. And that can also be something that is not left at the choice of each executive, but it can come as a policy. It can come as a standard of doing things that is set by the Strategy and Corporate Performance Management Office.
Right. Thank you a lot for these valuable insights. That brings us to the end of today's presentation, as there are no further questions left. Christina, would you have a few parting words for our listeners?
Yes, thank you very much for joining us today. It has been my pleasure to be here today and share the statistics from the latest research of the KPI Institute, as well as practical advice on how you can better bridge strategy with projects and operations. I'll take just a few more seconds of your time to show you how we can help. You've probably seen that we have a new branding, a new entity specialized in consulting called Systems. Systems, in partnership with the KPI Institute, are dedicated to excellence in providing superior management consulting solutions that support businesses achieve success. We envision to drive better systems and harmonious processes within organizations, and we are supporting companies all sizes and across this industries in strategy and business planning, performance measurement, strategy execution, operational performance management, as well as HR teams who need support to better shape their employee performance management practices. And lastly, we are excited to share the opportunity to join one of our events, the GPA unit, who is focused on maturity assessments and advancing strategy and performance management practices through successful improvement roadmaps, is waiting for professionals to join the Performance Excellency Forum and the World Gala this year in November in Riyadh. And you can still book your seat. I look forward to meeting you in person and further discuss about best practices and how we can drive better performance in our organizations. Thank you once again, and I wish you a great day ahead.